Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth annual Mother's Monday celebration. I hope that everybody who celebrated Mother's Monday yesterday felt valued and appreciated at home. But today, as we all return to our places of work, we're turning our attention to the role and value of working mothers and other caregivers in the workforce. I'm incredibly excited for today's conversations around how we can build better workplaces where caregiving and career ambition can coexist. My name is Christine Winston, and I'll be your MC for the next 2 hours of thought-provoking and hopefully action-inspiring conversation. My organization, Path Forward, is the proud steward of the Mother's Monday movement. As a nonprofit, Path Forward is working toward a world where caregiving is recognized and valued, where it doesn't disproportionately hinder women's career and economic progress, and where everyone can achieve their personal and professional dreams. Part of making that vision a reality is the important conversation that we're having here today on Mother's Monday. We have a tremendous program for you today, but before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank our hosts at Power to Fly, and especially to thank our presenting sponsor, the Adecco Group US Foundation, for their support in making this celebration possible and for their focus on helping women more meaningfully participate in the paid workforce. Here with just a few words about their work is Lane Gandy of the Adecco Foundation. Hi, Lane, welcome.
Hi, Christine. Hello, everyone. I am Lane Gandy, and I'm a director and leader of our workplace equality programs here at the Adecco Group US Foundation. We are so proud to be a presenting sponsor of Mother's Monday, and we're excited to be here in support of mothers everywhere and caregivers in general. Founded in 2019, the Adecco Group US Foundation is committed to making the world of work a better place, and our work is carried out through 3 pillars. First, we believe in the power of work, and we're dedicated to addressing the skills gap in America by helping to upskill and reskill workers, especially those in underserved or minority areas. Our hope is that by investing in these workers and offering them free education, we can enable them to get jobs in industries that are growing and help them reach their full career potential. Second, we believe in workplace equality. We know the value that comes with dedication to building a more diverse and inclusive workforce, and we work with and support organizations that advocate and champion for building better, more inclusive workplaces. Through programs like our Engage Women's Leadership Development Program, our Military Spouse Scholarship programs, and our partnerships with organizations like Path Forward, Moms First US, the WBC, and many others, we are committed to making the workplace work for moms and caregivers. Finally, we believe in giving back. We are a 501(c) nonprofit organization, and as such, we support charities that impact and improve the lives of American workers with a focus on skills education. And so why are we so excited to be partnered here for Mother's Monday? Simply put, we are here to plant seeds of trees whose shade we do not intend to sit under. The people who will benefit from our work here today are moms of the future. There's a quote that I love as a new mom to 2 wonderful boys, and it goes like this: there is not a single way to be a perfect mom, but there are a million ways to be a good one. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, that quote kept coming up and rings so true because it's exactly what we are here to do today. We are here not as perfect moms, not as perfect employers, not as perfect people, but we are committed to finding ways to be good moms, good supporters and advocates of moms, and good employers of moms. There's not a single or perfect way to make a mom feel like they have a place in your workforce, but there are a million ways to make them feel safe, secure, and that they have an ability to grow and thrive in your organization at the same time as they raise their families. So today, our hope is that we can encourage you to be open, to be curious, and that you can leave with a few ideas of how to be a better advocate and employer of moms, if not a perfect one. Thanks, Christine. I'll hand it back over to you.
Lane, thank you so much. I love what you just had to say. It isn't about doing everything perfectly right away. It's about finding sources of inspiration. It's about trying new things and doing the best that you can for the people in your lives, for the people in your companies, for your coworkers. And we really appreciate the support of the Adecco US Foundation for today's event. I look forward to chatting with Lane a little bit more later on one of our panels. Speaking of which, we have 3 fantastic panel discussions planned for today, focusing on topics that are of significant impact for working mothers and caregivers. And those panels are going to center around access to reliable and affordable childcare, the availability of paid leave, and transition support for people when they're returning to the workforce. But first, to kick off our event and to put all of the policy and practice that we're going to be discussing today in broader context, I am thrilled to welcome to the stage the founder of Mother's Monday, Gayatri Agnew, who is a senior diversity and inclusion executive at Walmart during her working hours, but she's also a tireless advocate for equity in the workplace at all hours. Gayatri will be chatting today with U.S. Representative Jennifer Wexton, Virginia, who is one of the leading voices in Washington, D.C. on issues impacting working mothers, children, and families. Gayatri, welcome to this stage. We're so thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, Christine, thank you so much. I could not be more thrilled to be here. You know, as we come into the 4th annual celebration of Mother's Monday, I find myself on Mother's Day, as I'm enjoying my family and my children and that time at home, getting excited about the conversation we're going to have on Monday in the workplace with everyone who has joined us today. So I'm over the moon to be here, and I could not be more thrilled for the guest who has joined us. So those of you that know me know that I'm a super policy nerd, which means I had a lot of fangirl activity going on for having the opportunity to do a fireside chat with the one and only Representative Wexton. And I'm thrilled to bring her up to the digital stage with us today. So let me share just a little bit with you about why I admire Representative Wexton so very much. So first of all, she has had a dedicated and distinguished career in public service, serving the people of Northern Virginia in a number of different capacities, prosecuting attorney, to member of the state Senate, to all-important mother of 2 sons, and mother to 2 adopted dogs who are rescue dogs, which I love, pet moms and people moms. But more than that, she's been a tireless advocate for all of us in Congress. She's worked to advance family-friendly policies. She's worked to create greater and more equitable workplaces across our nation. She's worked on critical national issues from trade, national security, digital citizenship, economic opportunity, and the empowerment of women. So I just could not be more thrilled to have her with us today.
And she is with us today. She's just having a couple of camera issues in the green room, so she'll be on in a second. Her timing is impeccable. Representative
I can
Wexton,
keep talking about how fabulous.
Yeah. Welcome, Representative Wexton. Gayatri has just done a lovely introduction for everyone that's joined us today. So if you're ready to flip your camera on, we would love to get started. Welcome.
Good morning. My goodness, I'm sorry I missed it. Hi, Gayatri.
You're fine, Representative Wexton. I just gushed on about my deep political nerdiness and therefore my deep appreciation for your national advocacy for myself and every other working mom across America, but also for all of your advocacy in Congress to make workplaces more inclusive. We appreciate you and we thank you. And thank you for being here today to be a part of Mother's Monday. So let's just start off, today is an important day. It follows Mother's Day. Yesterday, I saw that lovely photo you shared out of you and your 2 boys, young men, I should say.
But just share. A foot taller than I am. Yep, they're huge.
Share with us why this work matters to you, why this work of gender equity and inclusion of women in the workplace. Why is it so personally important to you?
Because I'm living it, I mean, every single day I see all the men who don't respect women and don't really understand that we bring to the workplace. When I first was elected well, before I even ran for the Virginia State Senate, which was my first real elected position, I went down to Richmond and I looked around. I didn't see anybody who looked like me. I didn't see very many any very many young women with kids who were school age. Very few, actually, very few. And so I knew that it's like, no wonder we don't have things like good childcare in Northern Virginia, true childcare policies in Virginia. Nobody here who actually understands what they have to deal with every single day. So I went down there and I got elected, and I went down there, and one of my first weeks there, it was a big cocktail party at the governor's mansion. I thought it was so exciting. So I went. And there was a guy there who fancied himself very progressive, and he's like, "Oh, it's good to meet you." He said, "Who's home watching your kids while you're here?" Right. And I said, "My husband, their father, who's watching your kids while you're here." He's like, "Oh gosh, I probably shouldn't have said that, should I?" I was like, "No, you shouldn't have, because if you said it to a man, you wouldn't have said it to a man." So of course, my husband, their father is home watching them, just like your wife, your mother is home watching them. It's just being the mother's job. So then he schooled him, and he definitely learned pretty well after that. But yeah, it's not uncommon to see men who just don't understand that, the being parent is not just being a mom.
That's right. That's right. And I thank you for sharing that story with us. And, you hear those kinds of anecdotes. And I think before I started serving in elected office, I heard those anecdotes and I thought, oh, well, I don't think that would still be happening today. And I ran for our city council in 2020 and had all kinds of questions like that. And you just have to pause and say,
Kids,
well,
yeah.
that's right. We just have to keep telling those stories to one another, and we have to keep fighting to change the expectation so that elected leadership looks like someone like you, looks like someone like me, looks like someone with young children or children of any age. It's so powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
People always ask me, how are your kids doing? How are your kids doing with everything? And I say, it's great, because now when I come home, they don't ask me what's for dinner anymore. They always used to say, I would come in the door after working all day, "Mom, what's for dinner? Mom, what's for dinner?" It didn't matter how hard I worked or what I did all day. But now that I'm not around much, they're like, "Hi, Mom, how are you?" And they'll ask Dad, "What's for dinner?" It makes me so happy.
I love that. Well, it takes a village in so many ways, and mom, dad, and the extended family, extended village. Your relatives by blood and those that you've adopted in the places where you live. It's incredible. As a mom, my kids are just turned 7 and are 8. And just every day I'm reminded that it takes a village to do everything that we do, right? Whether you're serving in Congress or, as I do, working down here at Walmart in Arkansas, it's incredible. One of the things that I, as a corporate employee at Walmart, was privileged to have access to when I had my youngest daughter was paid leave. And Representative Wexton, you have been a champion in both talking about and raising the issues of paid leave, but you've actually introduced and reintroduced legislation that would provide 12 weeks of paid parental and medical leave for federal employees. And yet it is still not the law of our land. It is not something that's been enacted. Can you just talk a little bit about just what you see driving the opposition or the resistance to enacting a policy that we know helps all families, right? It helps with their health, it helps with their well-being, it helps with their economics, but we still don't see it as part of our policy in the United States. So talk to us a little bit about why you think that is, and then also what you see as the next steps with potential for federal paid leave in the United States.
Well, we'll tell you, we did have success with federal parental paid leave in the US government. So we have that now for all new parents in America who work for the federal government.
Huge victory. I'm sorry, I phrased that question.
Huge
Thank
victory,
you.
Yeah. So
huge victory.
And for not just for moms who give birth, but also for dads, for a new child, for parents of adoptive children. I mean, they get the same 12 weeks, and there's something that's really good. Now we did that in my office before we had to, but a lot of offices in Congress didn't. So I'm glad that now it's a law of the land, not just for Congress, but for all the executive branch employees as well.
I love that. Really, I love that.
Good stuff. But that's good. And so, but we still don't have family leave, right? And so we still need that, especially because more and more people are becoming, a lot more women usually are the same generation, right? So we take care of our children, but we also take care of our elder parents as they get sick and stuff like that. They need help, and this allows parents to take time off to be with them if they're sick, even just for a couple of days, if they have an extended illness as well, which is something that we're seeing more and more as parents are aging. And so that's something that would make a big difference for so many people. Really would. I just don't think
And
it's something that we value in this country, unfortunately.
we've seen a lot of activity in certain states. You mentioned the federal action for federal employees. We've seen a number of companies, my company, Walmart included, that have both provide for and even have enhanced the paid leave that they offer. Where do you think and public opinion show strong support for leave? What do you think would be powerful actions that individuals that have joined us today can take, whether those actions are within a company or actions within the public sector, within government?
One of the things that we can do is start lobbying our elected officials for this. I mean, make it a priority. Don't talk about things like, oh gosh, we should do it. It would be nice if you get this. We have to do it. It's a non-starter. So we have to. There's no way we can't not do it, because it's, especially as the population ages, it's so important that they be able to age in place if they can. And
Yeah.
this is going to save everybody a lot of money. It's much better if you don't have to put your parents in a home, right? It'd be much better for everybody. It'd be much better for Medicare. It'd be much better for Medicaid. We don't have to put all these people in homes. If we can have them cared for by their loved ones in their own home, make a big difference. Fiscally, I think it will ultimately save us money. It's also just the right thing to do. We want to be family friendly. We want people to be able to take care of their kids if they get sick and things like that. You want people not to have to come to work or take their sick child to work with them. If they're not able to do that, then that's a real problem. So I think it makes perfect sense to me that we should all fight.
Absolutely. And on one of our panels later in this morning's segment, we'll be able to hear from Jody, who was formerly with the SCIM, who helped launch Show Us Your Leave, hashtag Show Us Your Leave. And I would just encourage everyone who's on the line with us today to be really proactive in sharing with friends and family and sharing online what benefits you have access to through your organization, your company, especially if you perhaps have not yet had children and you aren't aware of what leave benefits you have access through your company. Be sure that you learn that and share that, because I think Representative Wexton, as you so rightfully point out, it's the right thing to do, and it provides such benefit to all of us in the workplace, to our health, to our well-being, to the economic productivity of the organizations where we work, right? And it starts with the conversation being ever present, not just when a woman gets pregnant or when a family is expecting a new child, right? It's everything that might cause us to need days or weeks or months away from work, and to respect that reality and make sure that every family in the United States has the ability to do that. So please, everyone who's on the line, share your experiences with access to or not access to leave. I know I was so fortunate, like I said, to be working at Walmart when I had my daughter, and I had at that time 16 weeks of paid leave. Our company has since expanded now to 22 weeks of leave, which for a private company in the US is a really big deal. Could it still be better? Sure, but it's a big deal. That's right. That's right. So we collectively have to keep that conversation about paid leave going, because it is so important. And Representative Wexton, thank you for the ways in which you have helped to push forward the federal leave for employees, but also for your continued advocacy for folks whose service is not through government, that they also will have access to leave.
And now it's time to fight for this, because it's this is time that the unemployment is so low that it's hard for employers to find good employees. So you want to make sure that they maximize the benefits that they're willing to give us now, because this is the
That's right. That's
sure.
right. That's such a great point about labor force participation right now. So speaking of labor force participation, as you're aware, Mother's Monday, as Christine so eloquently put at the launch of the event, is stewarded by an incredible national nonprofit called Path Forward. And Path Forward has championed returnships, which are a way to help caregivers who have, for whatever reason, needed to formally exit the workforce for caregiving, men and women, predominantly women, but both. And then Path Forward helps to create returnships to help them come back into full-time work. Representative Wexton, you were able to embed funding for a study to look at how returnships like this might help our federal service and might help the federal government, and look at ways to create returnships for onboarding employees back into federal service or to federal service for the first time or back into federal service. Can you just talk a little bit about why you're interested, like what interests you about returnships and what value you think these returnees what value and experience they could bring to our federal government?
Well, gaps in their employment history, there's definitely discrimination against those who have a period where they're not working outside the home, right? So that's a real problem for these women who do take time off to raise their kids and stuff like that. They end up being facing discrimination when they're going back in the workplace. I think they have so much to offer. You know, they've learned so much in the previous career and just being able to pick up where they left off, really. So I think that these returnships are great, be able to help people who've been to have a gap in their employment, be able to come back into the workforce, be able to get trained, be able to really work with employers and show that they can do exactly what everybody else expects them to do. It's really fantastic. I mean, they worked really well where they've been used in the past. And the private industry was not excited about them to start with. They started actually in investment banking, and it was because they had really a lot of trouble hiring women in investment banking. Imagine that, right? Because they had not viewed as a very good place for them to work. So they had terrible diversity. They had a lot of trouble hiring new hires out of the business schools and things like that. So they didn't know what to do. So they started doing returnships, and they were fantastically well. Hired a whole bunch of women out of it. Found that they were great employees, did wonderful work, and just were very pleased with them.
Amazing, amazing. And you know, it's so powerful what happens when we just create slightly different ways, right, of making space for folks whose experiences have been different to still be included in the workplace, whether that workplace is the federal government or a company like Walmart, where I work. I'm sorry, I'm just getting a chat question and I want to pose this to you. I have oodles of questions for you, but I'll pull this in because I think this is a great question, which is just, could you share with us any success stories or inspiring examples where government policies have had a positive impact on working mothers and parents? And so we started with the federal.
We're going to see very soon. We're going to see very soon. Is that as a condition for getting these grants in the CHIPS and Science Act, these producers of chips and things like that, they have to provide on-site childcare whenever practicable. Otherwise, they have to give the parents stipends in order to be able to get childcare of their own. This is going to be a huge difference in terms of bringing people back in the workplace, because it's something that's a really big priority for us as a country to have more of these producers of these advanced microprocessing chips, because we need them in everything, and a lot of issues getting them from Taiwan and from other parts of the world right now. So it's very, very important that we have domestic production, but in order to encourage that, we also don't want to make sure only the people who have been able to take these jobs in the past are able to take them now. We're requiring the people who accept these companies who accept these grants, which are pretty sizable, they really are. They accept these carrot, but they also take care of those who are going to be working for them. So they have to provide on-site childcare, which is going to be hard for them to be able to make that transition, but I think that they will be able to do it, and I think that they'll want to do so. So it'll make a big, big difference in the lives of so many people.
I love that. And I love just the creativity in the policy making, right? I mentioned I'm a real policy nerd, right? And putting directly into the requirement, accessing the federal funding, the condition of on-site childcare.
Right. Yeah, that's brilliant.
It changes the game, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
Secretary Raimundo is going to be administering that, and she's fantastic. She's absolutely wonderful. The Secretary of Commerce, Secretary Virginia Raimundo, she gets it, so she'll be fantastic.
Well, and childcare, you know, we've talked about paid leave. This question is great because it turned us to childcare. You know, what we see is that the number one drivers of women exiting the workforce first is when they don't have access to paid leave. And so they'll often stay at home upon the birth or welcoming a new child into the family. But then that situation is sort of only exacerbated if they don't also have access to some form of quality childcare that as a family you feel good about sending your infant or young child into. So you gave the example.
That's affordable, and that's affordable as well.
That's right, and that is affordable.
A problem a lot of people have, you know. I worked with a woman in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office here in Loudoun County who was a prosecutor. She was a fantastic prosecutor. She had twins, and she couldn't afford to keep working. She was just like, to put twin infants in daycare, it cost basically my entire salary. So it just makes sense for her to keep working, even though she loved her job and she's a fantastic prosecutor. So that's a real loss to society.
Absolutely.
We don't let that happen if we can avoid it.
That's right. What you gave the great example out of commerce as the most recent action. I'm curious what else from a federal policy standpoint you're seeing. And there was a question about bipartisanship. So I'm curious if you could answer it sort of in two ways, which is when it comes to childcare, even going back to leave, how bipartisan do you think the support for these kinds of policies are? And where do you see that bipartisan support around the work?
I'll tell you that there's a lot more young Republican women across the aisle. This has traditionally been an issue that Democrats have been focused on, but now we've got so many young women on the Republican side of the aisle. I think that they're also focusing on it as well. The more young women are elected in both parties, I think the more we make this a real issue for us. Rosa DeLauro, who's the chair of the she's now the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee. She's been laser focused on this for years, taking care of kids and families. Something that is a big deal, and she's ready to hand it off to the next generation. So I'm so glad there's so many of us who are new, who just realize how important this issue is, and we're going to fight for it every single day, no matter what our political affiliation.
That's right. And I love that you specifically bring up newer Republican female and probably mother members of Congress, right? I think the idea that your lived experience influences so significantly how you view policy or how you set priorities is such a powerful thing. I have the privilege of serving on the board for an organization called the Vote Mama Foundation, and we recently just wrapped up a report. It was just released last week on the politics of parenthood, and it looked at the percentage of members of the 118th Congress who not only are parents, but then more specifically are parents to younger children, right? Children like your example of the woman who's twins, putting
Right.
twin infants into childcare, and the economic realities of managing childcare today in 2023 are very real for so many families. And that lived experience so influences how our policymakers legislate. I'm curious if you could just share a little bit more about how you've seen parents in Congress bring their own personal stories into how they legislate.
Well, it's a big deal. I mean, so many people have kids who are just child age, school age, and they don't have really care for them. So because of their parents of infants and toddlers who don't have any care at all. Things like making sure that we advocate for things like more slots in Head Start and stuff like that are very important. I know that we got to make sure that we set up everything for success. Federal government is the largest employer in the country, so we really kind of have to lead by example. We're a real opportunity to do that. I wish that we would do it more, but we keep fighting every single day for things like funding for childcare and development, block grants, Head Start and pre-K, and to give to families the Head Start that they need for their kids.
Absolutely.
With that early childhood education piece is really important as well. Make sure that it's not just child care, but it's also child education.
Yes. I love that you raised that, and thank you actually, because all of our centers that provide care to young children, the more we can focus on and encourage and empower and fund those centers to be centers of early learning and early brain development. I heard an early child care teacher referred to as a brain architect, and I just loved that term. My mom was actually an early learning educator or a brain architect for a long time, and loved the work. And eventually she had to leave early childhood education to take a teaching job in the K-12 system because she just couldn't support our family as an early learning educator. And I think there's, as you raise, it's so important for us to be looking at early learning. We are almost
kids for whom English is a second language or something like that. Those kids may not have the supports at home, so having the supports in school are so important, especially
in school. Absolutely. We're running short on our time, but one question I wanted to ask of you as we close out is, Representative Wexton, just what makes you hopeful right now about this work on gender equity, about this work on women's full inclusion in the workplace? What brings you hope right now?
The fact that we have things like this new child care requirement for the grants for these CHIPS and science grants and things like that. The fact that this is now a priority for so many people in Congress and a priority for people in the private sector as well. So recognizing that this helps make a workplace much better place to work and attracts better people and attracts better quality of applicant, and also teaches them to be better people. It's just also have them be able to do their jobs better. So it's just better for everybody. Outcome improves for everybody. So I just am very hopeful because I think more and more people are recognizing that.
I love that. I really appreciate that. Well, I can't tell you how wonderful it's been to have an opportunity to speak with you today. I want, on behalf of Path Forward and Mother's Monday and the entire team and everyone joining today, I want you to know that we so appreciate your tireless advocacy on these issues. And also know, as you wage your personal battle with Parkinson's, know that we are all with you and behind you, and that you are an incredible role model and leader for the vulnerability that you've demonstrated in sharing your diagnosis publicly. It's a powerful and courageous thing to do. Thank you for your continued
Thank you so much.
leadership.
Thank you guys for all that you do. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri and Representative Wexton, for that really insightful conversation, particularly around the ways that the government as a major employer is stepping up to lead by example on issues ranging from providing paid leave to federal workers, to tying federal grants to the provision of childcare, all the way to exploring returnships in the federal government. That was really inspiring. Next up, we are going to take a closer look at the issue of reliable and affordable childcare. We heard about it just now from Representative Wexton about the ways that not being able to afford childcare can interrupt women's careers. So this is a topic that we're really excited about talking about today. And I would like to welcome to the stage our three panelists on this topic. So if you would please join me, Molly Day, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Moms First, a national nonprofit transforming our workplaces, our government, and our culture to enable moms in America to thrive. We also have Lauren Hobbs, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Vivi, a company that's reinventing childcare and early learning for today's families. And Erica Booker, who is a Director of Business Transformation at PepsiCo Foods North America, where she is also the National Communications Lead for the Women of Color Employee Resource Group. Welcome to all three of you. Welcome to Mother's Monday. We're here today to discuss childcare on this panel, which is one of the biggest problems that's facing working moms and parents. Parents can't work without access to childcare. They have a hard time advancing when it's not reliable for them. And unfortunately, childcare is cost prohibitive for a lot of people. A recent care.com study found that 51% of Americans spend more than 20% of their household income on childcare. And I just read last week a report in the Wall Street Journal that put that number closer to 25%. 40% of parents report they've gone into debt to pay for childcare. And worse yet, more than half of Americans live in communities that have been classified as childcare deserts, meaning they can't even find childcare when they're looking for it. And all of this is a problem that we have left American workers largely to solve for on their own. So let's talk about how some companies are stepping up to help with this problem and how others can potentially follow suit. Molly, I would love to start with you. We've seen some really encouraging movement in the public sector. We just talked about it with the CHIPS Act and the federal grant applicant requirement to expand access to care, and all of the executive actions that were taken recently by President Biden. But we know that broader legislation isn't likely to pass in the current Congress. So your organization, Moms First, is pushing the private sector to act. And one of the ways that you're doing this is through your National Business Coalition for Childcare. Can you tell us a little bit more about Moms First and about the coalition?
All right, well, I absolutely can. Thank you, Christine. So I want to thank you and your team for convening this panel and inviting Moms First to be part of this conversation. So you're exactly right. Childcare is getting traction at the national level. And that's in part thanks to the conversation we're all driving through our activism and through events like this one. But we're also realists, and moms need help right now. So at Moms First, we're working to get childcare and paid leave for as many moms as possible in as many places as possible by 2027. And the space where we see a ton of opportunity is in the private sector. So last May, we launched the National Business Coalition for Childcare to do three things. One, megaphone with stories and data of companies who are supporting employees with childcare. Two, create a community of practice for companies who want to offer these benefits but don't know where to start. And three, generate insights and innovative practices through our practical work with companies and employees that offer new solutions to our childcare crisis. At the end of the day, the goal of this coalition is to elevate childcare as a business imperative. We need CEOs out there on every major stage, from Davos to Sun Valley to the White House, saying that when they started providing childcare, it improved retention, productivity, and profits, and it kept women in their leadership pipelines, because we know it does. So this is companies like Patagonia, who we work with. They offer on-site childcare that's available to both salaried and hourly workers. They estimate they recoup 90% of the cost of these centers through tax benefits and employee retention and engagement. We also have JP Morgan, who would love to have joined our coalition. They offer backup care to its employees, and they found that 80% of their employees would have taken unscheduled time off without the program. That's crazy, 80%. So it's this and other stories that bring these stats to life. That's how we're going to normalize employers supporting childcare the same way they provide any other benefit. And it's also how we ramp up pressure on the federal government to invest in childcare for every working mom, which helps every working family. And that's by mobilizing our business leaders as childcare advocates. So we know that at the end of the day, we will need federal policy to get to equitable solutions for every mom in this country. But we're going to start here. So today, Moms First has 25 members of our coalition. That's companies like Etsy, Morgan Stanley, Adecco, shout out to Lane. And this year we're aiming to grow. So we want to ensure that 100,000 employees get access to childcare benefits. So for anyone in this room who's interested in having your company join us, please follow up with me afterwards. We would love to have you and help us make the case for this important solution set.
Absolutely. I love that work, and it's so important to bring companies together to speak with one voice and to speak to the community of employers and encourage others to take action where they already are. But what I find really interesting about the coalition is that it isn't just companies they're talking about and advocating for better policies, but you also have a group of childcare innovators, companies that are providing solutions, companies that are helping other companies with their childcare solutions. And that's why we're really excited to have Lauren Hobbs from Vivi here with us today. Lauren, I know that you joined this coalition early on as one of the childcare innovators, and you're really focused at Vivi on building, quality childcare and early education. That is a benefit to working parents, but also really helping employers to create structures that work best for their particular employees and their particular setups. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you all are tackling the childcare issue from kind of both sides of the coin, from the parent and the employer perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, first of all. And I love that, as Molly mentioned, we also absolutely see the opportunity in the immediate short term with the private sector. But I do love that there's all three different sort of aspects to this panel, because advocacy, companies, and solutions need to work hand in hand to get anything done. And so, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Vivi. There's so many pieces of this puzzle to solve, but we are focused on working with employers to provide childcare and early education as a benefit. So we started as a network of schools. We have 5, soon to be 7 campuses in and around New York City. And with the schools, we're focused on ages 0 to 5. And we know that that is when moms are most likely to leave the workforce. That aspect of it is a very personal story for me. I'm a mom of a 4 and a 7-year-old. When I had a 1 and a 4-year-old, I had shifted my career to consulting for 2 years before I joined Vivi, and grew up with a mom who didn't work. So that, just really being on that precipice of potentially doing something different, I think very much speaks to me and really drives the work that we do. And Vivi really is working on creating a true generational shift towards more parents, specifically moms, staying in the workforce. So we have our schools, but we also know that childcare is not a one-size-fits-all, problem and what caregivers and employers' needs are constantly evolving. So beyond our schools, we also provide access to backup care throughout the country at over 3,500 partner schools, in-home backup care for those who with special needs or different solutions where their child cannot go to a backup care center, virtual tutoring for older children, and then finally a financial reimbursement program that we call Care Cash, which is available for companies so that employees can be reimbursed for care that they secure on their own. And that's being extended to even elder care, pet care, et cetera, really helping those in the sandwich generation who are both caring for aging parents as well as young children. So building solutions in this modular way is truly, truly important for what we're doing at Vivi, because we just know that these needs of, you know, what Molly may need on one day could be totally different than what Erica might need yesterday for her child, or what I might need tomorrow for mine. And that employers also have different needs as they evolve their workforce, and whether they're focused on retention of moms in the middle of their career, or getting people to a shift in a factory or at a hospital. All different solutions come into play. So we're really trying to provide flexibility across the board and access to as many people as possible.
That's fantastic, because, you know, everyone's needs for childcare are different. Every company's structure, the type of workforce that they operate with is a little bit different. And so their ability to offer childcare, or the ways in which they offer childcare, may vary from company to company, but the importance of its reliability and its affordability are really at the core here. And having those flexible solutions is so important. Erica, you work for PepsiCo, which is well known as one of the most supportive employers for women, recognized regularly as a best place to work for women, a best place to advance as a woman, which is just equally as important. And Pepsi has put together some really great benefits for childcare. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's offered at Pepsi as an employer for those who need childcare assistance?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. And so I am mom to a 7-year-old little girl and an 18-month-old little boy. So we are in full childcare mode these days. And don't have to tell this group, you know, being a parent is stressful, and there's something about mom, even when they're not sick. Maybe this just happens at my house, but my 7-year-old will like walk past her dad and ask me to open something, right? And so we're carrying all of that, all of the stressors of being a mom and an employee and balancing all these different things, and the financial and logistical stress of childcare only adds to it. And so I'm really grateful that PepsiCo has offered, and as Lauren mentioned, that modular package of benefits around childcare. And so the first thing, obviously, it's expensive, right? We know that there's costs associated with it, but also in terms of that, you mentioned having it be reputable and quality and convenient, and having that all bundled together, or having the options you need, has been really, really great. And so PepsiCo does offer discounts or reduced enrollment fees with some well-known reputable centers around. And that even something like the 10% discount can really add up and make a huge difference at the end of the year. Like, that's a month or more of groceries, right, for a family of 4 here in Texas. And so having that option, and then the quality, reliability, and convenience, I really want to kind of click on that too, right? You don't want to have to worry about what are you going to do if your child care provider doesn't show up or calls in sick, right? And you don't want to have to worry about, are your kids in an unsafe environment? I think McKinsey reported research that suggests only 13% of 2-year-olds in the United States attend childcare settings that would be deemed high quality. And so, like, as a mom, that's scary. And so I'm grateful that PepsiCo has chosen to not only offer discounts, but offer discounts with reputable and reliable like network of centers that are convenient and close, right? You need them to be close to home. You need them to have hours that align with working hours. That's critical. We've got pickup and drop off time, commute times for moms. And so that's really, really important. And then just that notion of childcare is not just daytime care for infants and toddlers, right? We've got after school care needs or holiday care needs. And so partnering with centers that have those extended hours, they offer childcare up to 12 years old. Those things are really, really beneficial for me as a mom in this stage, when we've got kind of two different spectrums of childcare needs and ages. And then I will also add, you know, outside of the traditional childcare, and both Molly and Laura mentioned this, love the backup childcare. Like, it is such a huge help. And it's one of my favorite things that PepsiCo offers, right? They'll tell you, having a baby, a toddler who catches whatever germs he walks by, like that backup care is such a blessing when you're in that 24-hour waiting period where you can't take them back to school and you're like, the kid is fine. And they're like, no, you have to be fever-free for 24 hours. It's so convenient and it's so affordable. I've requested someone the night before, and 8 a.m. they were there, and I think it was like $25 for the day. And I was able to go about what I needed to do and make sure my kid was taken care of and safe. They came to our house. I think there's the option, you know, there's also options for in-care centers if it's a school holiday or something else that you need to balance. But that's been really, really great. A couple other things PepsiCo offers: partnerships with companies like Sitter City, where if you're like me, where you don't have family nearby, or you're relocated, or you're still building your village, access to those services is really helpful for that elusive me time or date nights. And I think having the free background check element of it is really, really important. Being able to screen who you're bringing in your home as a mom makes using a service like that so much more convenient and just gives you that peace of mind. And then the last one I'll kind of touch on is the DCRA benefits, which is really helpful. So that's that dependent care reimbursement. And it's not something that all companies have to offer. And so the fact that PepsiCo does, they work for companies that don't, it really does help with setting aside those pre-tax dollars, getting some money back to help reduce those overall costs and reimbursement for childcare. And so, as the ladies mentioned, having this combination of things, this holistic package, it just makes PepsiCo an employer of choice for working moms, but also for moms that are considering getting back into the workforce, right? They're looking at who's going to offer me what I need and that balance that I need to be able to be the mom that I want to be, the spouse that I want to be, whatever it is, and find that good balance. And then I would be remiss, although it's not completely childcare related, but having employee resource groups like Women of Color, where women can build connection and foundation, it's critical, right? It allows us to have conversations, and we can't fix what we don't talk about, and we can't support each other if we don't know what's going on.
Absolutely. I think it takes all of those things, right? And you talk about how unpredictable life can be when you are a primary caregiver for a small child, but also for an aging parent. And I think the comprehensive set of benefits that you have really speaks to all of the possibilities of what can happen in life and provides you with an answer or a solution for those challenges that come up. And I love what you said about, the kind of the emergency care and costing $25 a day. The alternative is that you stay home from work. And that's actually way more expensive for your employer, for you to not be there and not be productive for the day, than it is for them to provide a backup childcare benefit for those situations where you really need help and you need it last minute. So I think that Pepsi is a great example of a company that is really supporting working parents. And the benefits are not just available to working moms, they're available to working dads too. And you mentioned this correctly. We've been proud at Path Forward to work with PepsiCo on a return to work program to help moms come back into the workforce. And it matters when someone's considering whether they're going to take that job, whether the benefits there reflect their needs as an employee. So I think that's just really tremendous. I think there's a lot that working parents want in terms of benefits from their companies, and that there's a lot of benefit to the company to providing them. I gave just one example now around like it's cheaper to provide backup childcare than it is to have an employee take a sudden day off. But I would love to hear from each of the three of you what you think working parents are looking for in terms of benefits, broadly speaking, and how companies can benefit when they provide them. And Erica, I'm going to start back with you because you are part of a broader community of women. What do you hear that people really value, but also still want in terms of benefits?
Yeah, I think anytime you can help subsidize or offset the cost, right? That really is a big part of it. But I go back to the modular and picking and choosing and the flexibility to use those benefits. And then I think there's also something about awareness of benefits. Sometimes we don't know everything our company offers or that's available to us maybe indirectly through them. There's discounts for being with certain companies outside of just what your employer offers on your your HR benefit sheet, right? And so I think having that flexibility and benefits that grow whatever stage of life you're at. I talked a lot about childcare benefits, but you did mention, the other backup care benefits. They are available for other resources that you might need if it's an aging parent or someone with disabilities. You can use that not just for a kid, but that flexibility. I think that's really, really critical for them. And I think just not so much a benefit, but just overall, like empathy and flexibility is critical. And so whether it's the right training for leaders or just the overall culture that you build around it, embracing working moms and what they have to offer and helping them know that they're valuable, we make amazing leaders. And knowing that we're valued and that you're showing it not just in your benefits, but in your culture, it makes all the difference in the world in your dedication to the company and your ability to grow as a woman and as a leader at whatever you choose to do and wherever you're at.
Absolutely. I think, we could have spent all day today talking about flexibility, not just in how we work, but in how we use the benefits that are provided to us to help us advance and to grow. I know also, Lauren, that you all recently did a research study around what working parents want in terms of childcare support. Can you share a little bit about what you learned through that study in terms of what employees are looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we interviewed in partnership with Work Labs and the Mom Project over 5,000 working parents, mostly moms. And truly everything that Erica just mentioned is absolutely spot on. I mean, the number one thing is that I was actually surprised by is that flexibility was not the most important thing to parents. Team and manager support that was the number one thing that they cited as being impactful in their caregiving journey. And so I think that building a culture and ERGs and that support underlies everything else. But a few other stats that came out. Number one, parents are most likely to take a career pause in the toddler preschool years, and more so than immediately after parental leave, which I think is somewhat surprising to companies. I think people are obviously focused on that first, what we call the sprint of parenthood, that parental leave, which is the foundation and so important, but then not really focused on once a child is potentially school age or preschool age, how hard and how expensive that gets for parents. And that is truly sort of the biggest risk factor of losing women in their mid-career. And then what we've talked about this a little bit, but to put it into numbers, 78% of parents have needed backup care at some point in their career, but only 8% have access to childcare subsidies. So closing that gap is absolutely critical. And what we also mentioned, or what we also looked into, and Christine, you mentioned this, is that most working parents cite PTO as their most helpful childcare benefit, but in reality, and I want people to repeat this in their heads, PTO is not a childcare benefit. When parents drain their PTO for childcare, they're first of all not at work, but they're also burning out quicker. So you're more likely to be in that risk zone of leaving your career entirely and also if you work amongst a team, obviously not every person has a child, but every person, I think, almost works with someone who has a child. And so when that person is out, it affects not only their own work product, but their team. So I think that's something that when you're asking about what parents need and what companies can do, all three of those statistics really point to the fact that parents need actual care. And so whether that's backup care, financial subsidy, subsidized full-time care, there's so many things that companies can do to give better access, even if it's starting relatively small. And I'm also similar to Erica, a huge believer in employees needing to speak up. So my colleague Jessica is going to drop a worksheet in the chat that we developed about how to advocate for childcare in your workplace. And I would just encourage everyone, whether you have an ERG, whether you just have one friend who's a parent in your workplace, you can start so small, and it really does only take a few people speaking up to eventually make a difference. So
that is so helpful. And in fact, we've been getting some questions in the chat for tools for how employers can approach this. And I think that I want to remind everybody today that while we're talking about things that companies can do to benefit working mothers and other caregivers, for everyone in this audience, regardless of your role at your company, you don't need to be an HR executive to foment change in your organization. So take a look at the toolkit that Lauren is going to have dropped into the chat here on ways you can advocate in your organization. Take a look at the toolkit that we've published on the Mother's Monday site about ways that you can implement change or advocate for change at your organization, because everyone has a voice in changing the way that their culture operates. And if you're wondering, as an HR executive or an executive at a company, what the business case is for providing better childcare, we've touched on some of it today and some of the reasons why providing childcare can be less costly. But Molly, I'd love to have you kind of bring us home today to talk about the business case for childcare, because I know this is something that Moms First has put a lot of thought into. In fact, documented a business case for childcare. So please share your findings with us.
Wonderful. And gosh, I have to say, Lauren, I love the tagline, PTO is not childcare. I think I'm going to post that in a few places. So, but as for the business case, I think the reason that we're so optimistic that the private sector is going to step up and meet this need is that the business case for doing it is so clear. So, we did a survey last year with McKinsey, and what it found is that 88% of women looking for a job said having access to childcare benefits, flexibility, or control over their schedules would make them more likely to choose an employer. And this is a really important stat because we need to remember two things. One, women are half the workforce. And even in not the tightest of labor markets, we're still seeing women quit at the highest rate in 5 years. And that women's leadership pipeline is hollowing out, not only in the place that's been broken for years, that early manager rung, but also now at senior levels. So I think project forward 5-10 years, and we're looking at a corporate workforce that looks very different than today, and it's going in the wrong direction. So I think we really see this as an impetus. And, I think it's also important for employers to remember that if you fail to listen to the needs of working moms or truly working parents, if you don't invest in childcare benefits, you will pay a price. So the cost of replacing a single employee is on average 20% of their annual salary. And that goes up as the employee's role gets more specialized, more senior. And childcare is named time and time again as one of the driving reasons for a mom to leave the workforce. So you really can't afford not to listen. And it's not just for employers, but it's for our economy. So when we zoom out and look at the productivity losses businesses incurred last year because of childcare disruptions, we hit $23 billion. So, you've heard it time and time again from each of us on examples of backup care, what that means. There are real economic costs, and there's real opportunity for companies to take the lead, to step up and win in a labor market, and also win for their bottom line, but also for their employees, which I think more and more you're seeing the next generation of employees think differently about what they want from an employer. So I think this is really an incredible market opportunity, as well as a business imperative to solve the childcare crisis that will impact all of us. Yeah. And we
well
hope folks can
said.
come and join us. We have resources. I saw that in the chat. So resources, having your ERG, any individual, or at the senior levels, really taking action is this is the moment. So
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to all three of you. Thank you, Molly, Lauren, Erica, for sharing your insights, your experience. And I hope that everyone listening today will use the tools that are going to be shared in the chat and that are available on the Mother's Monday site, at Vivi and at Moms First, to help advocate for change around childcare in your organizations, because childcare truly is a driver of employee attraction, employee retention, employee productivity, women's advancement, and overall economic success as we engage and retain more women in the paid workforce. So thank you to all of you today for your leadership and for the work that you're doing to help working mothers and families every day, and for sharing your wisdom here with everyone at Mother's Monday. Before we turn to our next panel, which is an exciting one, on the topic of paid leave, we're going to take a quick break to allow everyone to get up and stretch and grab a drink. Please join us back here in 5 minutes when we will be joined by leaders representing Pinterest, the Skim, and Walmart to talk about parental leave. So everybody take a quick stretch and we will see you in 5. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you were able to get in a quick drink and a stretch, and welcome back. In this second hour, we are going to be discussing 2 more really important issues facing working moms and caregivers: paid leave and support for return to work. So please join me in welcoming our panel on paid leave. First, I'd like to welcome Jody Patkin. She is a mission-driven marketing and communications executive who, during her time at the Skim, led the hashtag Show Us Your Leave initiative that brought much-needed transparency to the need for more expansive and inclusive policies around leave. We're also joined by Jacqueline Ainsley, who is the head of global benefits at Pinterest, where she is focused on developing benefits and that enhance employees' careers and their lives. And Sarah Arnio, who is the director of global treasury at Walmart, where she is also the vice chair of the Women's Resource Community and co-lead of the Walmart Career Moms Group, a group that's dedicated to making Walmart the best place to work for mothers. And I'm delighted to welcome back to the stage Gayatri Agnew to lead our discussion.
Thank you so much, Christine. Christine knows I love talking about paid leave so much. She let me come back to do it with these wonderful, wonderful women. So thank you all for being on with us this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. And Jacqueline, Jody, and Sarah, thank you for spending some time doing this lightning panel on paid leave. So I feel like we got, for those of you that were able to be on the line for my chat with Representative Wexton, you got a little bit of a taste of some of the paid leave policy challenges, but it feels important to just give the voiceover that the United States is essentially the only developed nation that doesn't offer a comprehensive and standard paid leave program. And that's a problem, not just for moms who welcome new babies, but it's a problem for our economy. It's a problem for the health and well-being of families, and it's a problem for our nation's future. Not to put it in stark terms, but it really is. Not only that, but as a result of no national standard policy, we have fragmented and inconsistent leave offered by states, by companies. And so there's an extraordinary amount of lack of predictability. And anyone raising young children knows that anything that can be predictable is a deep gift, right? And the unpredictability creates a higher mental load, which creates an extraordinary amount of stress and anxiety, which are sort of the last 2 things you want to add into the equation when you're already balancing all of the things that families who welcome new children are balancing. So it's a problem. I don't have to tell the group that's joined us today that it is, but it really is. There's a study by SHRM that shows that less than 50% of US employees have access to any leave at all. Some of that leave can be as short as a week. Long leaves can be, in the 16 to maybe 20 week range. Rarely do you see leave stretching longer than that. And perhaps most critically, very little of that leave extends to the father and is really limited to medical leave for the birthing mother. So lots of opportunities for improvement, but opportunities for improvement starts with understanding and starts with data. So let's jump right in. And Jody, we're going to start with you. I've mentioned already a couple of times, and Christine talked a bit about the Show Us Your Leave campaign that you launched and pioneered when you were at the SCIM. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that campaign was launched, what you've seen as a result of the data that's been collected from the more than 600 companies that have participated, and what you hope comes next with that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. So back many months ago now at this point, paid family leave was pulled from the Build Back Better bill. And I got a text from one of our co-founders and co-CEOs at the SCIM that said, can we post this? Which is, as the head of brand marketing and comms, you always love those texts, right? Because you're like, oh, good, they're checking first. This is amazing. Because there's that partnership. And it was a really honest, raw, frustrated post that this had been pulled. She had 2 young children, and it was just sheer frustration. And the amount of responses that came pouring in on Instagram of, this has happened to me, I have no leave, on and on and on and on and on, really struck a nerve. And so myself and our co-CEOs and co-founders and our comms and marketing and social team kind of put our heads together, and we said, there's something there here, we're striking a nerve. And I was very fortunate at the time to be at a company that had a very strong paid family leave program as a digital media platform dedicated to helping mostly millennial women live their smartest lives and empowering them through understanding and knowledge succinctly. We knew that we had to continue the conversation. And so we built the hashtag Show Us Your Leave around the concept that at the time we wanted people to show us their leave or really lack thereof. And again, it took off instantly. And from there, we wanted to just not have the conversation, but have resources there as well. And so we built a database that now, to your earlier comment, has more than 600 companies in it that is detailing everything from length of primary caregiver leave, length of secondary caregiver leave, NICU leave, paid time off, fertility treatment, so on and so forth. And even from a personal note, when I was pregnant with my second child, a group of us were all expecting, and we all said, we need a better leave policy here at the company where we were at the time. And we built a really scrappy database ourselves and went around to different clients and partners of the organization and put it together. And here, the reason the hashtag was so successful was people were sharing their own stories. And we said, if we're really going to add rocket fuel to this conversation, we need to share our policy and walk the walk and lead by example. And candidly, at the time, we didn't have parity on primary and secondary caregiver leave. And we said, before we do this, let's do what we know we should do. And it was a unique situation because the company was primarily comprised of women itself, flipped from most, but we said, we got to walk the walk here. So we changed our policy. I remember crying in a room with our co-CEOs and our head of HR because we were able to do this, and we were able to do this for families and then show the world. And the team over at Pinterest were among the first to really jump in on that conversation and show their leave. And so now, not only do we have this database, we have templates and tools and resources for those who don't know how to start the question with their employer or don't know where to look for their next job and their next role, right? There are many individuals now who don't know where they're going to work next. The economy is in an interesting point in time. And so this resource can say, hey, these companies really are putting families first. So we've got that for you and we have that support. So my hope for what comes next is that this conversation was not a flash in the pan when the hashtag was all over everyone's LinkedIn feeds, but that we continue to fuel this database by more companies showing their leave, improving their policies, and committing to support families and children, because it's not just good for families, but it's good for business and it's good for the economy as well.
I love it, Jody. Thank you. And it really, data is so powerful. Yeah. And you talked about you and your friends sort of sharing that information. And I just, so much about parenthood is needing access to information you don't have, and finding that mom or dad with a kid just older than yours who can be like, here's the list of whatever you need, right? Here's the list
That's right.
childcare centers, here's the list of summer camps, and so it just strikes me when I pulled up the database and I was looking through the file, and I was like, this kind of looks like the Excel spreadsheets like parents send each other. And yet
I built that.
Yeah,
I built it. I'm not an engineer. I was like, we need something
for everybody.
To your point, it is.
Since everyone who's watching is online with us, if you've not had an opportunity to pull that up, multitask away, pull that up, take a look at it. It's really powerful. If you notice, like, I'll do a quick call out to Walmart like Sarah and I did, that Walmart's missing from the show us your leave. Take that back and think about who that conversation needs to be had with so that perhaps your employer can get added into the database. Because while 600 is an amazing number, there's a lot more companies in the US than 600, right? And it's a living dynamic database. So it's such a powerful tool for all of us to continue this work. You mentioned Pinterest, Jody, and Jacqueline, we're going to turn to you. Jacqueline is the head of benefits at Pinterest, and I love the diversity of this panel and views on how we move equitable leave policies forward. So Jacqueline, one of the reasons why we're so excited that you guys are here is when you go through the database that was built by the SCIM, you see Pinterest on there and you guys are able to say yes to the vast majority of different ways to provide comprehensive and expansive paid leave. That wasn't always the case. Those were shifts in policy and you helped to lead a lot of that. So can you just share a bit of that story with us? Why have you guys made those choices, and what were maybe some of the tougher parts of that work for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me today. So first off, I'll say I'm fortunate to work at a company where our executive team really supports families and caregivers. So we have that support from the top, which makes it a lot easier to make policy change when your executive team is truly supportive of families and caregivers. Our mission at Pinterest is to help people create a life they love. And that definitely extends to the employee experience. So if creating a life you love means creating a family, we want to help support you through that. And that starts from the time that you're thinking about having a family all the way through your children growing old or being caretakers of parents. So there are pieces along the way which kind of influenced our thinking and change. As you mentioned, we made some changes to our policies in 2021. And I'd say the reasons for those changes are twofold. So one, we had feedback from our community of caregivers at Pinterest, a formal community of caregivers who are passionate about being caregivers. We heard from them that we could do better. So having an open line of communication with the people for whom these policies really matter is super important, and listening to them. So they pushed us to say, we could offer more, we could do better, longer paid leave. So that was one definitely important component of the change. And then the second is really thinking about how all the pieces of the programs fit together. So it's not just paid leave for, bonding after a child is born, but there are so many things along the way that we need to do to help support families through that life transition. So even starting from thinking about having a family, having support for fertility, for surrogacy, for adoption, and the different ways that you can form your family. Unfortunately, things don't always go to plan. So having support, bereavement support, if you experience a miscarriage, and then if you need to take disability time off prior to your baby being born, making sure that's fully paid and not cutting into your bonding time with your baby. So having paid leave on the front end. If your child's in the NICU after they're born, making sure that we support families, and that also doesn't cut into their bonding leave time, their 20 weeks of paid leave. So they have family care leave while their child is in the NICU, and then your bonding time leaves when your baby comes home with you. So really trying to think about like that full life cycle of thinking about having a baby to bring your baby home. It was kind of how we wanted to kind of repackage and think about how we support caregivers through that life transition.
I love that, Jacqueline. And just one follow-up question on that. Just share a little bit with what's been the reaction from employees, like what feedback, how you talked about that open feedback loop, which I think is so important. Yeah. Just share a little bit about what you're hearing back in response to some of the changes that have been made.
Really positive feedback. We always have really great uptake, of course, of people taking parental leave, and both men and women taking their full paid leave. So I think that's a response in and of itself, that it was something needed and important. Also, one of the changes we made just last year was what I mentioned around having the paid time for disability before you go out on leave. So before it was just through our short-term disability plan, not fully paid. And that was feedback that we got from parents that, taking a cut in pay for that period of time was difficult. So again, having that open feedback loop, so important to take into consideration how this hits when people actually go to use the benefit.
It's really powerful, and thank you. And as was mentioned, Jacqueline leads benefits at Pinterest. And now we're going to turn to Sarah, who I have the pleasure of getting to work with here at Walmart. And Sarah leads one of the ERGs. And so, these conversations are so linked, right? Because Sarah, you've helped to bubble up a lot of that feedback, to organize a lot of the voices and stories of individuals who are impacted by these kinds of programs. So Sarah, can you talk us through a little bit some of the changes that have occurred at Walmart around leave and some of the ways in which the ERGs, or we call them ARGs, associate resource groups here at Walmart, played a role in helping to, as Jacqueline put it, sort of maintain and keep that open line of communication with the policymakers in our company that were changing the policies.
Yeah, for sure. So like everybody else, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be able to talk about this work that we're doing. So I am a co-chair, co-lead of the Walmart Career Moms group, as Gayatri mentioned, which Gayatri knows very well, as the co-founder of this group many years ago. And she handed off the reins probably about 2.5 years ago. So I have the pleasure of serving as a side gig, outside our day job, with 2 other women who I didn't know, who I think we're very different from each other, but have really become really good friends because we all share kind of the same mission and this goal of making Walmart the best place for moms to work. So our efforts have been very grassroots. We were not a formal ARG, as Gayatri mentioned, associate resource group. But we really found a need to build a sense of community at Walmart. And so a space where moms and caregivers at different points of their motherhood journey, a little bit of what y'all were talking about with Jody, of the community and finding people who were going through similar experiences. So we wanted to, from women who are thinking about conceiving all the way to empty nesters or grandparents and all of those points in between, how can we build the space of safety and trust where moms at Walmart can come together and share? So we really started with monthly meetings where we had a few dozen attendees, maybe over Zoom. We brought in speakers for some of these meetings to talk about salient topics like burnout or teenage depression. And then other times we just had kind of an open forum. And so it was, what's on your mind? How about a chance to brag about yourself? What's something cool your kid has done recently? And really these monthly meetings started to grow in attendees. And what was really cool is to see a mix of both our salaried, our home office corporate associates and our field associates as well. And so that really enabled us to have a diversity of stories, of backgrounds, of locations. And so we knew that we needed to kind of percolate up these stories to leadership. And so we engaged with our chief people officer and kind of asked her to be informally our executive sponsor of this group. So we met with her probably quarterly, and we presented our strategy and our plan and shared these anecdotes and, talked about what we've been hearing on the ground. And it really was a pivotal moment when this was ramping up. This was 2020, which we all know was kind of when caregivers and especially mothers had kind of unprecedented strain on them and their roles, especially as working parents. And so we took kind of some of the feedback that we've been hearing of women who had Zoom fatigue, or moms who couldn't put their kids to bed because they were working through the evening, day after day. Then when we started talking about returning to the office, in 2021, these conversations started. We wanted to make sure we had a seat at the table to influence those policies, because we know that women were benefiting from being at home, being more productive in work, being more productive in their personal lives, which in turn kind of made them a better worker, right? So we had some of those opportunities there to talk with leadership. We've also partnered with ARGs to advocate, for example, with the real estate team when they're remodeling our stores. So we partnered with Pride to change the name from mother's rooms to nursing rooms too, to kind of be inclusive of all groups. And that was really cool to see the impact that had, as well as not just on our associates, but on our customers too. So that's some of the kind of the things that we've done. And then when it comes to parental leave, I think probably most recently, we did some benchmarking work with the benefits team. And we really asked to challenge ourselves to kind of set new practices and kind of be an industry leader. Now, it's really hard with an organization our size of, as I mentioned, the mix of salaried and a field and just being so large. But I'm really proud to say that we were able to add an additional 6 weeks to our parental pay policy. So now parents, regardless of gender, when they welcome a new child, they have 12 weeks of paid leave this is for salaried associates. And then birth moms have up to 22 weeks of paid leave. So we feel like that was a very good milestone. We're not, done yet. There's a discrepancy with field associates as well, with our hourly associates. But we're happy that we now have a seat at the table. We're formally part of the women's resource community, the WRC. And so we're speaking up more and more to talk about benefits, to talk about remodeling our campus, our new campus, to talk about the merchandise we sell. So I'm really excited, and I can't wait to see what else we can accomplish.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate you sharing some of that, and your mention of the partnership with the Pride ARG is so powerful too, as we think about the expansion of surrogacy benefits and just other ways to bring children into your family and into your home, and being as inclusive in the definition of family as we can be. And all of that ladders up to then, how do we define a standard paid leave policy, meaning everything that we just heard about what Pinterest is doing, what Walmart is doing. Those companies are choosing to do that, but they're not required to do that. There's a couple of questions in chat about what different policies look like. I want to go back to the statement I made at the very beginning, which was that there is no floor for private paid leave. So we heard from Representative Wexton that there is now a standard in place for federal employees, but that's employees of the federal government. It's not a federal policy for our nation. And so it is at the discretion of companies. And just as they can provide that leave, they can also take that leave away. And we've actually seen that. There was a recent announcement from Twitter of a wild backsliding of their leave all the way down to 2 weeks of leave, which at that point, for anyone that has birthed a child, is sort of a laughable amount of leave, right? And so I'm curious if each of you, just as we wrap the panel in 30 seconds to a minute, just give us what do you want those on the line today to be focused on when it comes to how we think about equitable paid leave in the US, or what's keeping you focused or hopeful in this work? And Jody, we'll start with you and then go Jacqueline and close out with Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. What is keeping me focused and hopeful is the progress that we're making by comparing notes and sharing data and getting better together. I saw a question in the chat on small businesses, and there are a lot of great resources and articles on the cost of not having leave and the time it takes to fill a vacant position if you don't let that person take their leave and return to work. And that parents who do take their leave come back stronger and more fulfilled and more tied to that company. And so there are ways to make it work, and lots of resources out there. So my hope is that we do not end this conversation and we keep going and going, because both federal as well as company leave need to support one another to support families.
Love it. Thank you, Jody. Jacqueline, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this conversation and conversations like it make me hopeful that we're talking about it. The Show Us Your Leave campaign is out there. I think more visibility, the better. The more we keep being in these conversations, the better. There's obviously a lot more work to do, and I think at Pinterest, one thing we're focusing on is just, once you bring your baby home, you take your parental leave. Your parent, as we know who are parents, your parent journey has just begun. So it's not over. So how do we support families after that initial leave with resources for mental health for their children, or even parent coaching around behavioral therapy? So just trying to kind of make sure that we continue to support families even after that parental leave.
Love that. Sarah.
Yeah, and then I kind of mentioned on our side, I think one of our goals is to find parity or at least improvements for the hourly versus the salaried associates there, as well as kind of to Jacqueline's point, some additional resources. So during pregnancy, we have introduced doulas for Walmart associates in certain states, but having that be across the board, because we do know the outcomes of having a doula are much improved when there is one available. So, and I think it's just hopeful to see how this type of, grassroots efforts led by a few women who kind of were interested in this topic have been able to influence change. And so I'll just put a plug out there. If anybody has any interest in this, feel free to find me on LinkedIn or contact me, and we're happy to talk more about it.
I love it. Thank you. So hopefully what everyone online is taking away from these incredible women is that your voice really matters, and your voice really matters in your place of employment and in your community, particularly on issues of paid leave. So if you have opinions, share them. If you have access to a company policy that you can share through Show Us Your Leave, share it and keep talking about it. I think that's the biggest takeaway. So Christine, back to you. And ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. That was a fantastic conversation. I just want to underscore what Gayatri just shared around using Show Us Your Leave. Some of you in the chat were asking about tools that you can use, and there's an amazing advocacy document on the SCIM site around Show Us Your Leave for how you can go and talk about more expansive paid leave policies at your company. We also heard in the chat, which was quite lively during this panel, some questions around, how do we encourage more fathers to take paid leave? And I think that part of that goes to what Sarah was talking about, which is that it's important for us to create more expansive leave policies that specifically call out that these are parental leave, that is for fathers, for mothers, for parents of all genders, for those who have adopted children. And the more that we explicitly write policies that are inclusive in that way, the more every employee can feel free to take the leave that they're entitled to through those policies. So that was a fantastic conversation. It's clear there's still a lot of work to be done on paid leave, but encouraging how much progress is being made by leading companies that recognize the value of providing those benefits. And specifically, I think one of the pivot to the next conversation was teed up quite nicely by Jacqueline when she mentioned that parenthood is a journey. So it doesn't start and stop during your leave. What happens after an employee returns from paid leave? And here to join me in discussing how companies can support caregivers across transitions, both in terms of their caregiving and in and out of the workforce, are our final three panelists for today. I would love to welcome to the stage to join me, Blessing Adesian, who is the CEO and founder of MH Work Life, where she is building infrastructure to drive and improve policy and people and business results. I'd also like to welcome back Lane Gandy from the Adecco Group US Foundation, where she is leading equity programs, including their Engage Women's Leadership Development Series, their returnship program, and their CEO for 1 month internship program. And finally, I'm excited to welcome Anjali Sinha, who is a senior manager of talent acquisition at Deloitte. She also serves as the national leader for innovative recruiting solutions. And in her work, she focuses on creating equity and opportunity through programs like Encore, which is their program for bringing professionals back into the workforce. So welcome to all three of you. Very excited to have you here for our final conversation of the day. I want to start by just acknowledging that transitions are hard. And as one of our last panelists just brought up, it is a marathon, parenting, and caregiving, in addition to being lifelong when you are a parent, is also something that evolves over time, right? So parents experience immediate challenges like finding childcare or dealing with breastfeeding and pumping while they're at work. but they also have many longer term challenges in that marathon. And that might include career transitions, needing to provide elder care, on-ramps and off-ramps from the paid workforce. So I think you all understand the vulnerability that is created by these transitions, and you're all doing some amazing work to help caregivers across their spectrum of needs. So I would love to start with you, Blessing. I am really excited about the work that you are doing at MH Work Life because you acknowledge this spectrum of caregiving and that employees experience different pain points along that spectrum. So I would love to hear how you think about that spectrum and how MH Work Life is innovating solutions that help meet employees' needs at every point in that spectrum.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Lane and Angeli, for joining this wonderful panel as well. I mean, it's pretty clear, talking about even return to work, right? It's different phases. There's the going, leaving on parental leave, which I actually would prefer that we start using a different word because people are not leaving, they are going to care for loved ones. And so, there's a lot of the different spectrum of care that is needed throughout the life of an employee or throughout our working lives, if you will. You are either having kids, you are either getting pregnant. Some of us are, maybe, in the fertility stage or in the surrogacy stage or in the adoption stage. So we found that instead of, sort of going at this because a lot of time we focus on childcare, right? And that's a great place to start as well. But there's so many, I think maybe now that I have a 14-year-old, I'm like, whoa, we're not talking enough about teenagers. We're not talking enough about high school students that we have to parent through, a pandemic and so on and so forth. So what we're realizing, what we realized through our research is really that employees have an array of care needs throughout their working lives, whether that is fertility, pregnancy, childcare, even self-care, right? As a woman, we all know the statistics when it comes to women's health. A lot of time we're thinking about period, menopause, and so on and so forth. And so our solution at MH Work Life really looks at that whole spectrum of care and say, is there a way for us to support employees throughout their working lives? So one of the products that we have is what we call a care wallet. And the idea there is we're always going to have unexpected care costs. How many of us, have had to either stay home, with a sick child or a child with special needs, or, we have to take care of grandma and we need to shift schedules with the kids. So that is, an example of how people are using our wallet, right? So employees connect their bank account, their debit card, and we automatically flag caregiving expenses that they can be reimbursed for. So that is one of our product. Another product that we have is really one-on-one advice with our work-life advisors, our experts, because we know that people have different things. It could be adoption, it could be housekeeping, it could be support. We had a mom who said, I got a promotion and my husband got a promotion, and I'm not sure, right, what to do because we were going to stop my career. And so now she has the promotion. So she needed to discuss that. She doesn't want to discuss that with a therapist, right? She's like, I need to talk to people who understand this. And she was able to speak to one of our advisors, and they were, she was able to get the response or the answers that she needed. Another product that we have, which is related to parental leave and returning to work, is really covering that care gap when people leave. What we found was that a lot of the work is still on parents and people and non-parents, right? So we redistribute the work when people leave. But what is happening, according to the latest research, is that more and more companies are providing longer parental leave. One of our partners, Indeed, we started working with them when they had 8 weeks of parental leave for men. Well, now, they have 26 weeks of gender neutral parental leave. And so that is significant, right? Because we now need, real hands-on support by, vetted talent, which is what we do with the Care Gap consultants. So, we've just been having a really great time working with parents and caregivers. And, we work with a lot of the folks that have been on the panel so far, Vivi and Scheme and so on and so forth. So really just great, happy to be here with you, Christine.
I'm delighted to have you here, and I love what you are doing, particularly with the wallet, because caregiving and people's caregiving needs are definitely not one size fits all. And it's very difficult for any employer, regardless of their size, to build benefits that are customized to each employee, right? There is no one size fits all. And by thinking of this more of an allowance that allows people to spend their care benefits in a way that makes most sense for who they are, what their caregiving need is, and where they are with that caregiving in that moment, is a really interesting innovation that I think is going to help employers scale their benefits in a way that is less costly and more targeted. Because I think it will really help people take the benefits that they need the most. So thank you for joining us today, Blessing. Lane, I know you talked a little bit up front about the mission that the Adecco Group has around supporting women in the workforce, and especially women in transition. You sponsor organizations like Dress for Success and Girls Who Code, and now Mother's Monday and Moms First. You are doing what you said, which is planting seeds for trees whose shade you will never sit in. And I love that. I'm going to repeat that as a great way to go through life. But one of the things that you all have elected to do specifically this year is to lead by example as the Adecco Group, a large staffing agency with more than 100,000 clients worldwide. You've decided you want to lead by example by creating on-ramps for people who are returning to the paid workforce after breaks. Can you tell us a little bit more about why the foundation is supporting this initiative within the Adecco Group?
Absolutely, Christine. And thank you to allowing me to be on this panel with these amazing leaders. I'm so honored. But at the foundation, we really have always been focused on enabling women to, what we say is, have a real life balance, not a work-life balance, because it's very common. My boss says it all the time to us: you can have it all, not all at once, all the time. And so sometimes that means leaning into what's important with your family life, and sometimes that means leaning into your work. And so we've really been committed through our Engaged Leadership Development Program and helping women get the support they need in their careers so that we can fulfill our pledge with Paradigm for Parity and have 50% of leadership positions filled by 2030. But then all of a sudden, as we were doing and partnering with great organizations like you mentioned, but all of a sudden 2019 and 2020 COVID hit, right? End of 2019, beginning of 2020. And we started to see our amazing women do what they do best. They put on their multitasking caps and they are full-time teachers, full-time housekeepers, full-time caregivers, and at-home nurses. And by the way, they're trying to work their 9 to 5. And many of them were forced out of the workforce at that point. And then the ripple effect continued as they started to burn out. And we're still not seeing that the women are returning back, because the truth of the matter is, Christine, and I know that other people have said this, but I just want to drive it home. When you've had a gap, especially of 2 or more years in the workforce, the barriers to reentry are high for a woman. They're costly, quite literally. And so at the foundation, when we started to think about how do we fix this, we realized we needed to walk the walk, not just talk and not just be a microphone piece supporting organizations who are doing the work, but we needed to set up to have our own returnship program within the Adecco Group. So in 2023, we are launching 2 returnship programs in LHH and ACOTUS. And our goal at the end of this is not just to hire a minimum of 20 women back to the workforce. It's to be able to educate from a true place of know-how, to say, what are the questions that the hiring managers are going to have? How do we train them on how to make that landing back into the workplace a little bit softer? How do we give them the tools that they need to provide their women who are returning a cooperative environment where people maybe stop and ask, are you okay? Right? And because as women, we don't necessarily always ask for what we need. And that is going to be true of returners. So by launching these returnships, we hope to be able to establish a real toolkit of know-how, and then ultimately share that with our clients, with our other employers at large and partners, to make returnship programs a staple permanent piece of our hiring process and our talent acquisition process, because women are not broken. The system is broken, and we just need to make sure that we give employers every tool that they need to feel confident hiring returners back.
I love that, Lane. And at Path Forward, we are so excited to be working with you on these programs. You are all being so very thoughtful about how to create a good experience. And I think that the leading by example is something that we've heard time and time again today. Companies putting themselves out there, companies sharing their policies, companies trying something, being iterative in this process, right? We may not get all of these things right the first time we do them or the first policy change that we make, but it's about making those incremental changes that over time create better workplaces for working mothers and caregivers. And I think that, returnship programs for all of those for whom caregiving has become too much and has forced them out of the workplace, are a really important piece of the puzzle for creating better workplaces that work for working moms. And I'm excited to have Anjali here with us today because right now, there are about 225 employers that offer these kinds of programs in the United States. It's a tiny, tiny number. But Deloitte was one of the earliest employers to offer this kind of program. And your program, Anjali, is one of the longest running, one of the biggest in scale. And I have found in our work with you that it's also a program that supports the returners in some really unique and impactful ways. And I would love to have you tell us a little bit more about this program and about how you think about support and connection in this transition for the people that you hire in through Encore.
Thanks for the question, Christine, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel. We set up the Encore program with a few guiding principles at the very base of it. One was that, when we bring in this, talent pool that may not have signed up for full-time work, we wanted to make sure that we don't have them struggle for what level they need to be assessed for, and to make it very difficult for them to come back to pay parity. So at the very beginning, what we did was we tagged them to typical roles that we have on offer. And we said, you are not going to be a participant. You're not going to be an intern. You are going to be at the level of expertise that you left the market at. And so assessments in your interviews will help assess where you fit at Deloitte. And that will lead to what the market needs to pay for you, so that we don't put you on the back foot of negotiating, a salary that, you don't have the ability to kind of advocate for yourself. So that was the very first thing that we had a commitment from the business. The other piece that I think we struggled with was, this to have a returnship or not. And I think our end goal or our North Star was, at the end of the day, this needs to be an offering, just like we have campus hiring and experience hiring. We need to make space for all these non-traditional talent pools to kind of come in. And addressing this one elephant in the room that I keep telling everybody, which it is, right? Our system is broken. We do not recognize that life stages kind of take over your life, and then you don't have a choice in some of the decisions that get made for you. And having you move out of participating in the workforce may not be on you, but it's on us then to build that bridge for you. And traditional recruiting solutions are not equipped to do any of that. So we did a whole lot of we spoke to all our alumni who left us. And the one thing that we were surprised by was when they gave us feedback, they're like, I'm not coming back because, and the because was, my skills are no longer relevant. So our first thing was, yes, this needs to be recruiting led, but it needs to be learning driven. Because at the end of the day, imposter syndrome is real, right? And the one thing that we can help these individuals with is providing them learning support. And then after discussing it with multiple people, doing a pilot and realizing that what we needed was a community to support these individuals, almost like it takes a village, right? And so we came up with this, all right, so we need to stand up multiple people across talent and our business teams to support each person that comes in. And that formula, it's changed over a period of time, but when we started, it was 1:12. So for every one person coming in through the Encore program, we had about 12 people kind of standing up, I should say, conspiring for their success, because we were standing up that experience that needed to make them successful, from whether it be just building up their confidence, making them comfortable in a work environment, to identifying what's right for them, what's the best experience, how do we get them the right project experience to make sure that their professional network is grown and their skills. And so while the formula has remained about 1:12, I've had lots of participants come back to me and say, you spoke about 1:12. I've experienced far wider, because a whole lot of people have reached out to me to support me. And that's only because it's grown. So I don't anticipate that everybody's going to get that experience in their first go, but our program has now, it's in our 9th year, and we think that the whole firm is now kind of signed up for it, whether they liked it or not. It's now part of our ethos, and so we all kind of lean in, and that's the reason why it continues to grow.
I love that. And, it has grown the way that it has because of the way that you focused on, I wrote down what you said about it being recruiting led, but learning driven, right? These kinds of programs are at their heart hiring programs. You want to find great talent, and there are really experienced and wonderful people out there who could fill the roles that you have at your organization. But you're addressing that confidence piece by providing learning, refreshing learning, providing mentorship. And that's so important, particularly since many people, when returning, still have some of those same caregiving responsibilities that they have that force them out of the workforce in the first place. And I think what is really key to starting a program like this is that acknowledgement that you had at the beginning, Anjali, and the acknowledgement, Lane, that you've had, that it is on us as employers, as workplaces, to build those bridges to welcome people back in. So thank you for sharing that. I know that for all of us, our connection to this work is really personal. My own connection to this work as a mother of two, as someone who took a career break for caregiving reasons, because that happened to me as well and had to find my way back in. All of this work is very personal to me. And that reminds me that this Mother's Monday movement is built through shared experiences and shared goals. So before we close out today's event, I would love to hear from each of you what personally connects you to this work, and what moments there have been in your career that connect you to this movement and keep you doing the work that you do to advocate for working mothers and caregivers. And Lane, I'm going to start with you, because I know this is a very personal topic to you, since you returned from parental leave, 5-6 weeks ago?
That's right. Yes, Christine. In fact, I have had 2 babies in the span of about 2.5 years. So on a personal note, this hits home for me. And in a sentence, why I'm passionate about it is because I am a working mom. At the end of the day, being a mother or a caregiver, you have to remember that it is hard and it takes a lot of courage. The first thing, it's hard and it takes courage to even commit to the thought of being a mother, and having the courage to think about having a baby in some of the most formidable years of your career, because that's the reality of it. It's hard to commit to the idea that you are going to step away from work, even if you do have amazing benefits, and know that your team is going to be okay and that they're going to think that you are a really valuable member to come back to the team. That's a mental courage game. And it's really hard to then drop your child off at daycare and go back to work and when you start having the juxtaposition of your top priority versus your top priority. But as you start to think about that and what we can do as employers, it's really amazing, because when you talk to a mom, even one who's been out of the workforce for a few years, and you start listening to her about her hardest day or a challenge she overcame, what you're going to start hearing is immediate root cause analysis, incredible adaptability and flexibility skills, incredible emotional intelligence and empathy in any situation. And you're going to realize that by just making sure that you're creating a culture where a mom or a caretaker can be flexible and lean into their real life and their priorities at home, but also get the work done because moms will do it more efficiently and faster than ever, we are going to create a better workforce of tomorrow with a lot more women in there leading and planting seeds of positive change.
Absolutely. And that will create a better workforce for everyone that is in it, because I think that creates the freedom for everyone, regardless of, where their priorities are in their home life and their caregiving responsibilities, to feel the freedom to have that kind of integration where they aren't having it all at once, but they are having it, all at different times. So, and Anjali, what about you? What keeps you connected to this work?
I think it started about 10 years back. We were doing this assessment of we are having a problem retaining women talent. And we'd done a survey of, the women who left. And, the questions that we asked them is, why did you leave? And what's your plan to come back? And when we did this survey, our intention was to have it recruiting focused. But what we realized was that, in most of the cases, women left because of childcare. And this was in a different geography. But what we found was that they stayed out of the workforce because of the burden of elder care. And so when we presented this back to our leadership, I think I would like to hope that I had a little bit of a hand in this, is we actually crafted a family leave policy that's now applied to the US member firm, where we extend 16 weeks of leave, whether it is to support a new child and celebrate them, or it is to apply for foster care, or it is to take care of a spouse or a parent. And the reason for that is because we know that nobody's career is it goes sequentially. Nothing does. And so, to your point, you can't have it all at the same time. And to address that, I think we set up this policy, and it's really changed the way employees kind of experience their work and manage their life. So that's my personal connect is through that.
I love that. And really, the reason you got there was through listening. And we've heard this time and time again today. It's so important to listen to different groups in your organization and to hear what people need, because sometimes the answer will surprise you. And Blessing, I would like to let you finish this out. What keeps you from your personal experience, what keeps you connected to the work that you're doing and to this movement?
Absolutely. I think, I always look back. I try now to focus on the positives. And I always look back to my experience coming into the workforce as a young working mother. I was a single mother, an immigrant, a Black woman working in a predominantly white male environment. And I'll never forget my first day as an employee. I showed up with my daughter in a car seat. And that was because I had to pick up my badge before I go drop her off at daycare. And just the support, right, that I received from my manager at the time, which he ended up helping me find childcare in his own house with one of his family members. And to me, I think those are the kind of stories that I think really reminds us that inherently we're all good people, and inherently we all want the best for our neighbors, for our coworkers, for our employees. And so I think leaning into that care, leaning into that radical care, and believing that it is possible to support a working mother, it is possible to support a working parent, it is possible to have a productive workplace that truly cares for everyone, employees of all kinds, whether you're a single mother or you're like me, an immigrant that had no family in America. So I think, those are the stories that keeps me connected to this work.
Thank you, Blessing. I love that you closed on the idea of possibility, because nothing is impossible if we listen, if we hear one another, and if we think creatively about how we can solve the problems that we're facing collectively as a community of mothers, of others, of allies, of employers. And I thank you all for being here today to share your insights and your personal stories. So thank you, Blessing, Lane, and Anjali for joining me today. I know there are many people in our audience today who share aspects of your experiences, and it's the power of this community and this movement that will ultimately bring about the changes that we need to make our workplaces work better for mothers and caregivers. So before we end today, I just want to express our enormous gratitude to our sponsors, the Adecco Group US Foundation, the Burke Foundation, the Walmart Women's Resource Community, and Keurig Dr. Pepper's Women's and Allies ERG. This day of inspiring conversations would not have been possible without your support. And I'd also like to thank our fabulous hosts, the team at Power to Fly. So thank you to all of our speakers and all of our panelists. I hope that everyone here today is walking away with stories and tools and inspiration to bring about change in your own company's policies and culture that will make it easier for caregiving and career ambition to coexist. Thank you for being part of this movement today and for being part of this movement all year long. Please continue to follow Mother's Monday on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for stories of progress as it's being made throughout the year on all of the issues that are impacting working mothers and caregivers. And don't forget to save the date for next year's Mother's Monday, which will be, as always, on the Monday after Mother's Day, Monday, May 13th, 2024, when we'll come together again to celebrate what will hopefully be a year of monumental progress. Thank you to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Mother's Monday.